Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to unpack a pretty big idea, using your super to buy property. Now, a lot of people dream about doing this, but you've got to know the rules are very, very specific. So, can you do it? The short answer is yes, you absolutely can. But, and this is a big but, it's not as simple as just using your savings. You can't just wander into a bank and ask for a regular home loan. It takes a special kind of setup, a very specific type of loan, and you really need to understand the rules inside and out. Okay, so here's how we're going to break it all down. First, we'll talk about the big idea of borrowing inside your super. Then, we'll get into the nitty-gritty of the legal structure you have to use. It's not optional. After that, we'll look at what lenders want to see, how they crunch the numbers to see what you can afford, and finally, we'll hit the bottom line on what it all really means.
All right, Section 1, the most important thing to get straight from the get-go is that you can't use your regular everyday super fund for this. This whole strategy is only possible if you have what's called a self-managed super fund, or an SMSF, and you have to use a very particular kind of loan.
Now, this is probably one of the most important terms you're going to hear, limited recourse. It's a huge protection that's built right into the system. It basically means that if things go wrong and the loan defaults, the bank can only come after the property itself. They can't touch any of the other assets in your super fund, like your shares or your cash. It keeps the rest of your retirement nest egg safe. So what's really fascinating here is the legal blueprint you have to follow. And I mean, you have to follow it. This isn't a suggestion. It's a regulated structure that's specifically designed to protect that limited recourse feature we just talked about. And here's where it gets a little unusual. While you're still paying off that loan, your super fund doesn't actually own the property directly. Nope. A completely separate special purpose trust is created to buy the property and hold the title on behalf of your SMSF. This separation is the absolute cornerstone of the whole arrangement. So let's break down the cast of characters here. First, you've got your SMSF, which acts as the official borrower. It's the one taking out the loan. Second, you create this new property trust, sometimes called a bear trust. It takes the money from the SMSF, and its only job is to hold the legal title to the property, kind of like a protective shield. And third, there's you, the actual person. You have to step in and give the lender a personal, unlimited guarantee. All right, so getting that legal structure right is one massive step. But then you hit the next big hurdle, actually convincing a lender to give you the money. And believe me, they are very, very careful with these loans, so their list of requirements is pretty long. Lenders have a really strict checklist. For starters, they're going to want principal and interest repayments right from day one, so no interest-only periods. And this next one is crucial. Your fund needs a liquidity buffer. A lender like First Mac will want to see that your SMSF still holds at least 5% of the property's value in other assets, like cash or shares, after the deal is done. And like we said, that personal guarantee from every single member, totally non-negotiable. Now, lenders will offer you different products, and it usually comes down to how big your SMSF's deposit is. Take First Mac, for example. They've got two main tiers. With their SMSF 70 product, you need to put down a 30% deposit. That gets you a 70% loan-to-value ratio, but you can borrow up to $2 million. On the other hand, if you've only got a 20% deposit, you could go for the SMSF 80 product, but then your maximum loan amount drops to $1.5 million. So, the million-dollar question is, how does a lender decide if your super fund can actually afford the loan? I mean, it's not based on your personal salary. They look at two and only two very specific sources of income that are flowing directly into that SMSF. First up, they look at the rent that the property is going to bring in, but they're pretty conservative here. They'll usually only count 80% of that gross rent, just to build in a buffer for things like vacancies or repairs. Then, they take 100% of all the super contributions that are confirmed to be going into the fund. That means your employer's payments plus any extra voluntary contributions you make. Those two things together are what has to power the whole loan. And this is a point that lenders are incredibly strict about. I really want to hammer this home. Your personal income from your job, it doesn't count at all. The loan has to be completely self-sufficient. The super fund itself has to prove that it can handle the debt using just the rent and the contributions. It has to stand on its own 2 feet. Let's make this real with an actual case study from a First Mac assessment. Meet Julie and Tim. They wanted to buy an $810,000 property inside their SMSF. Now, that property was expected to bring in about $33,800 a year in rent. Plus, their combined employers' super contributions were just over $25,000 a year.
So the lender took 80% of that rent, added 100% of those contributions, and boom, the total income was more than enough to service a $580,000 loan. That's a clear pass.
So, what's the bottom line here? We've gone through the structure, the rules, the calculations. What are the absolute key things you need to walk away with?
Well, it really all comes down to one simple black and white test. You take 80% of the rent, you add 100% of your super contributions, and that final number has to be bigger than the loan repayments. That's it. If the math works, you pass. If it doesn't, it's a no-go.
And please remember this number, 5%. That's the liquidity buffer. Your super fund can't be 100% all in on this one property. Lenders demand that you keep a safety net of at least 5% of the property's value in cash or shares. It's there to cover surprises, like emergency repairs or if you have a tenant leave unexpectedly. It's what keeps the fund out of trouble.
So getting your head around the structure, the legal hoops, and the lender's math is really the first big step. It's a powerful way to build wealth, no doubt, but it also comes with a ton of complexity and a lot of responsibility. And that really leaves you with a pretty big question to ask yourself when you think about your own financial future.